They played best friends on TV, but off-screen something went very wrong. What should have been a happy facts of life reunion quietly collapsed into betrayal, silence, and nearly 30 years without speaking. A secret deal, a move for money, and a fallout so severe that even Norman Lear couldn't repair the damage. Fans were told the cast simply drifted apart. But the real story is far more shocking, and the person who caused it all is the last one you'd ever expect. In 1979, NBC was struggling badly. It ranked last among the major networks, with only Little House on the Prairie performing well. Everything else was failing, including an expensive misfire called Supertrain, meant to be a glamorous love boat on rails. Millions were spent, and NBC was left desperate for a win. One modest bright spot was Different Strokes. It wasn't a runaway hit, but audiences responded to it, especially to Gary Coleman. NBC's president, Fred Silverman, recognized that even mild success was worth building on. Known for reviving CBS and ABC, Silverman now aimed to rescue NBC the same way. That summer, NBC launched The Facts of Life as a spin-off from Different Strokes. At first, it barely registered, ranking near the bottom of the ratings. But after major changes in its second season, the show found its footing. By season 3, it had become NBC's top comedy. Much of that success traced back to Charlotte Rae. She played Mrs. Garrett, the housekeeper on Different Strokes, and was far more than a supporting actress. A seasoned performer, Rae pitched the idea of giving her character a life of her own, running a girls' school. Smartly, she negotiated a safety net, ensuring she could return to the original show if the spin-off failed. Silverman made an unusually bold move by greenlighting the spin-off before Different Strokes even finished its first season. He trusted his instincts, leaned on his relationship with Norman Lear, and bet on Rae's strength as a lead. That gamble paid off. The Facts of Life became the foundation of NBC's turnaround, setting the stage for future classics like Cheers, Hill Street Blues, and St. Elsewhere. In 1979, as Charlotte Rae prepared for a spin-off of Different Strokes, she visited the Westlake School for Girls in Bel Air to research the setting. She wasn't looking for young talent, just trying to absorb the atmosphere. But during the visit, a 13-year-old student named Mindy Cohn was assigned to guide Rae and producer Norman Lear around campus. Mindy had no acting experience at all. She was simply funny, outspoken, and completely herself. That was enough. Rae and Lear were so charmed that they created a brand new character just for her. Natalie Green didn't exist until Mindy walked into their lives, and she landed the role without ever auditioning. Overnight, she was on television, yet still doing homework every night as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Around the same time, 9-year-old Kim Fields nearly skipped the audition that would change her life. When she arrived, she saw older girls who looked polished and intimidating, and she panicked. Her mother pulled her into a bathroom and gave her a firm pep talk. Don't let fear decide your future. Kim went back in and won the role of Tootie. Although the character was meant to be older, Kim was so small that the producers had to improvise. They put her on roller skates to boost her height, accidentally creating one of the show's most memorable visual trademarks. Molly Ringwald was also part of the original cast. Just 11 years old, she played Molly Parker, a socially aware girl who carried a guitar and spoke her mind. But when the show struggled in its first season, NBC decided to overhaul everything. The cast was trimmed, and Molly was among those quietly let go. She later described the experience as humiliating, but the setback was brief. Within a few years, she became one of the biggest teen stars of the 1980s. When The Facts of Life first aired, it was unfocused and overcrowded. Ratings were weak, and NBC seriously considered canceling it after one season. Even Norman Lear wanted his name removed from the credits, convinced the show wouldn't last. One executive, however, saw potential. Brandon Tartikoff fought to keep it alive. The second season brought drastic changes. The cast was cut down, the focus narrowed, and the show centered on Blair, Natalie, and Tootie. The transition was awkward, but it worked. Then Nancy McKeon arrived as Joe Polniacek, a tough, street-smart newcomer whose instant clash with Blair gave the show new energy. Joe added grit and balance, and with her arrival, the facts of life finally found its voice. Behind the scenes, the experience was far from carefree. Nancy McKeon later admitted that growing up on the show was difficult. The cast was made up of teenagers, constantly scrutinized for their looks and weight, while cameras captured every awkward stage of adolescence. As McKeon put it years later, they were essentially filming someone's puberty. The pressure was relentless, and the spotlight could be unforgiving. The show itself was also evolving. The setting shifted away from the dormitory and into the school cafeteria, where the girls now worked under Mrs. Garrett, who had become the school's dietitian. That change gave the writers more freedom. The series felt less like a slumber party and more like real life. There were still odd, almost surreal moments, like Lobster mysteriously disappearing from the kitchen, but the retooling worked. Ratings soared. In just 1 year, The Facts of Life went from one of NBC's weakest sitcoms to a genuine hit. By season 3, it wasn't just surviving, it was NBC's top comedy, even outperforming Different Strokes, the show that had spawned it. What kept audiences coming back wasn't only humor, but heart. The series tackled serious topics, racism, substance abuse, eating disorders, even suicide, without pretending they were easy conversations. One episode dealing with teen sexuality was so controversial that Lisa Whelchel, who played Blair, chose not to participate for personal reasons. NBC aired it anyway, with a parental warning, and it still ranked among the week's most watched shows. The theme song became just as iconic. You Take the Good, You Take the Bad, written by Alan Thicke, Gloria Loring, and Al Burton, summed up the show perfectly. Thicke once said a theme song was a 24-second pitch for the entire series, and this one worked. But off-camera, things were more complicated. After one summer break, Mindy Cohn returned to set noticeably slimmer, the result of normal teenage changes. Instead of concern or support, producers questioned her. They wanted to know why she'd lost weight, and told her she needed to gain it back. Though Natalie was never labeled the fat girl on screen, that's how some behind the scenes viewed her. Mindy's mother stepped in, firmly refusing to let her daughter be pressured. Mindy held her ground. The compromise was quieter but still painful. Wardrobe began dressing her in oversized clothes to make her appear heavier on camera. Things didn't improve once the cameras stopped rolling. Around that time, Joan Rivers, one of the most famous comedians in the world, began using the facts of life as a punchline in her stand-up routines. She jokingly renamed it The Fats of Life, and the nickname spread quickly. There was no internet, but it didn't matter. The girls heard it. They saw the clips. Lisa Whelchel later said they all knew exactly what Rivers was implying. Mindy Cohn remembered Rivers turning it into a recurring joke, asking audiences if they'd seen the latest episode of The Fats of Life. The crowd laughed, and the girls absorbed it in silence. No one discussed it on set. They were exhausted by the constant focus on weight, but the jokes never stopped. Lisa Whelchel faced a different kind of pressure. Producers placed a scale on set and required her to weigh herself, sometimes right in front of them. It became routine. During hiatus periods, when she thought she'd be going home for a break, she was instead sent to weight loss camps. She would tell people she was returning to Texas, only to be handed a ticket to what she later described as a fat farm. She was just 16, dealing with her parents' divorce and the natural changes of adolescence, yet support was replaced by scrutiny. Even small details reinforced the message. One day, the craft table quietly swapped donuts and cookies for celery and carrot sticks. Lisa later said it wasn't always openly cruel, but it was constant. The underlying message was clear. Her body wasn't acceptable as it was, and that pressure left lasting marks. Nancy McKeon, who joined the show at 14, later reflected on what it meant to grow up entirely on camera. From puberty to adulthood, every change was recorded, watched, and judged. Psychologists often point out that adolescence is one of the most vulnerable periods for body image, and being under public scrutiny only magnifies that fragility. Lisa described it as a daily battle, never escaping the feeling of being measured. Lisa Whelchel was still a teenager when she stepped into the role of Blair Warner on The Facts of Life. The show quickly became a hit, and Blair emerged as one of its most recognizable characters. But early on, Lisa found herself facing a decision that would quietly shape the series. The producers wanted to build a major storyline around Blair becoming the first character to lose her virginity. Lisa immediately pushed back. Having been a practicing Christian since age 10, her faith was central to her identity, and she wasn't comfortable going there. When the idea was presented, she was direct and firm, telling the producers it wasn't something she could participate in. It wasn't only a personal conviction. Lisa also felt a sense of responsibility to the young audience watching her. She believed a subject that serious couldn't be handled thoughtfully in a single episode surrounded by commercials. Turning down a headline storyline on a popular show was risky, especially for a young actress, but she didn't waver. To her surprise, the producers respected her choice. Lisa later said they were unusually supportive of her beliefs, something not always common in Hollywood. The storyline didn't disappear, it was simply shelved. For 7 years, it remained untouched. When it finally resurfaced in the show's final season, it was reassigned to Natalie, played by Mindy Cohn. Mindy had no objections, and in 1988, the episode aired with Natalie, now 21, making the decision within a serious, long-term relationship. The moment stood out. After nearly a decade of avoiding the topic, the show finally addressed it, with characters who were fully grown adults. NBC treated the episode cautiously, opening it with a parental advisory, something rare for a sitcom at the time. Despite that, the episode performed well, ranking 22nd for the week. Reactions were mixed. Some praised its restraint and maturity, while others felt it came off as judgmental or overly cautious. Still, it marked a turning point in the show's long history of carefully navigating real-life issues. Years later, in 2001, plans for a reunion movie took shape. Most of the cast agreed to return, but Nancy McKeon declined. Officially, it was due to scheduling conflicts with the division, though she had previously joked that if Joe came back, it should be as a ghost, a remark that oddly lingered. The film moved forward without her, focusing on a Thanksgiving reunion. Blair had become a hotel executive. Tootie, now Dorothy, was a talk show host, and Natalie brought the group back together. Joe didn't appear, but her daughter did. Ironically, the cast had once promised they'd never do a reunion, but time, perspective, and changing circumstances softened that stance. In the end, most of them returned. Years later, in 2019, the 4 original stars finally reunited on screen, but not for a reboot. Instead, they came together for a Lifetime Christmas movie, You Light Up My Christmas, produced by Kim Fields. She referred to the women as her sisters and made sure they had input on their characters and costumes. The film was filled with subtle nods to longtime fans, including a touching tribute to Charlotte Rae, who had passed away the year before. The town's ice rink was named after her, a gesture audiences warmly embraced. Then, in December 2021, nostalgia surged again. ABC aired a live special where celebrities reenacted classic sitcoms, including The Facts of Life and Different Strokes. The response was overwhelming. Millions tuned in, critics praised it, and stars like Octavia Spencer, Amy Poehler, and Jennifer Aniston openly named The Facts of Life as a favorite. Watching it all was Norman Lear, the show's legendary creator, who was stunned by how deeply the series still resonated. Inspired, Lear reached out to Mindy Cohn, Lisa Whelchel, Kim Fields, and Nancy McKeon about a possible revival. It was 2022, the pandemic era, and the timing felt oddly perfect. The women reconnected over Zoom, reminiscing, laughing, and seriously discussing ideas. They even hired a writer, and Lear, well into his 90s, offered notes and guidance. For the first time in decades, a real revival felt possible. Then it unraveled. In a July 2024 interview, Mindy Cohn revealed that one cast member had secretly pursued a solo spin-off behind the others' backs. The move shattered trust and effectively ended a friendship that had lasted more than 40 years. The fallout was immediate. Communication stopped for months, and when it resumed, it was distant and polite at best. Cohn described it as surface level, no longer real friendship. Norman Lear tried to repair the damage before his death in December 2023, but nothing worked. By the time Cohn spoke publicly, she made it clear the trust was gone for good. The revival plans collapsed, despite real momentum and shared commitment. For fans, the betrayal cut deep. One of the show's most cherished qualities had always been its lack of behind-the-scenes scandal. In February 2024, Lisa Whelchel, Nancy McKeon, and Mindy Cohn appeared together on The Drew Barrymore Show, sharing memories and honoring Charlotte Rae. It was heartfelt, but Kim Fields was notably absent. That absence fueled speculation. Online sleuths began dissecting interviews, appearances, and social media posts. Cohn's recent photos included Fields and McKeon, but not Whelchel. Reddit threads exploded, theories multiplied, and by midsummer, public opinion had largely settled on who fans believed crossed the line. There was never official confirmation. But what began as hope for a joyful reunion ended in silence, fractured relationships, and a fandom left stunned. For now, the bond that once defined the facts of life appears irreparably broken.